Hi, welcome to our 11th session. And this is Kickbutt Leadership Live Conference. And we had we're a little bit delayed. We had a little bit of technical human difficulty. But I pushed the wrong button, or I sent it to the wrong person. So I apologize. Anyway, I'm Coni Meyers with Kickbutt Leadership, and this is my co-host.
I'm Kim White with the My Sexy Business team.
And the lady that we have on, I've only known her for a short period of time. Kim introduced me to her. And may I just say that I love what she's doing. I love where she's come from. I love her ideas. I pretty much love everything about her. So, Angela Stillwell, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. I am so happy to be here with you ladies.
She's my superhero.
I think Dharma has decided she wants to make an appearance.
I love it.
As soon as we went live, she decided to walk over here and start joining us. So
I love
she may stick her big head right here.
I love it. I love it. Well, Angela, what I do with my interviews with Kickbutt Leadership is I always ask, the first question is, were you a leader as a child?
Yes. Yes. That is an understatement.
I love it. Tell us about it.
I as the oldest child, I was always very protective of, you can see Dharma's ear sticking in the video here. I was always very protective of my brother, but had a very, oh, sorry, you guys. She's coming in for a hello.
That's adorable.
When you work from home, this is what happens.
You have a sexy life with a sexy dog.
She has a frosty face. Go lay down, baby. Go lay down. I know, sweetie. So, okay, back to leadership as a child. Being the oldest child and living in a very dysfunctional family, I guess I kind of felt like I didn't have a choice but to step into that leadership role. I was always very protective of my little brother, but it wasn't just that. It was situations with my mom and situations with my dad, and I just kind of took over as the leader of the family and have done that since I can remember. In fact, family members love to laugh about the fact that when my brother and we are about 2.5 years apart. So I was 2.5 when he was born. And one of the family members, they were taking me back home from the hospital from visiting with my mom, having my brother. And I told them how to get back to the house.
I love it.
So yeah, a little bit of a leader.
Right off the bat. I said, that's the sign of a leader right off the bat.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been from day one, just kind of like stepping out. I try to let other people take over sometimes.
So when, as you were progressing through your life, how did what you did as a child, the things that you learned as a child to be a leader, how did you use those as you were growing, expanding your life?
It's to me, part of leadership is taking ownership and taking responsibility for what's going on in your own life. And if you have a responsibility to anyone else, making sure that you are looking out for them as well. And despite the fact that I had been or was in this very dysfunctional environment growing up, I had these ideas of things that I wanted to accomplish. And I knew that if I was dependent upon my parents, it wasn't going to happen. So, I was changing schools every year, literally every year. I went to 13 different schools between kindergarten and my senior year of high school. And yet I was an honor roll student. I took part in various sports and that sort of thing. And so, I knew that I did not want to go down the same path that they had gone, that my parents had gone. And so it was very important to me at the time to make sure that I got my college degree. And then I thought, okay, I'm getting my master's degree as well. So I did that, and I worked through school. I completed undergrad school in 4 years, never went during the summer. I was working 30 to 40 hours a week while I was going to school full time. And then once I graduated from undergrad, then went into corporate America and wanted to start doing an MBA program. And it was an executive MBA program. So you had to get, letters of recommendation and that sort of thing. And one of the other people that was in the office was in this same program that I was in. And it was a guy, he was more established and that sort of thing. But he was like, Ange, I think this is a program that you would do really well in. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll try it. And I went to our general manager and asked if I could do it. And he hemmed and hawed and was like, I just don't think this is the right time. And I said, I tell you what, let me go this first semester. And if I do well, and I was in sales at the time, and if my numbers and everything, if I still do well, then I get to go the next semester. And I just wouldn't take no for an answer. Because I was like, I'm going to go whether you say yes or not. I wanted them to pay for part of it. And the only way I could get them to pay for part of it was for him to agree to it. It wasn't that I had to have him agree to it in order for me to go. So yeah, I did that. And then later at that same company, I wanted a promotion and was meeting with my manager. And they said, well, we don't think you're ready for it, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, you know what? You guys are holding me back. I'm going to go elsewhere. And I did. So I took my career and went to the next place. And I kind of have done that all along. It's taking responsibility for whatever it is that's going on in your life and whatever your dreams and goals are, and making sure that I'm doing the best next step to get there. And when you're leading other people, making sure that they're doing that. When you put a business together or a nonprofit or even a volunteer organization, you have to make sure that you are helping everyone in there become leaders themselves. And leader doesn't necessarily mean that they are, that they're stepping into a management role or that they have a team, but that they are fulfilling their purpose, whatever that purpose is, giving them what they need to do that.
I think that's so important. And a lot of times leaders don't understand that truly is what their role is. And that's really what Kickbutt is all about. It's about attracting the right people and developing a team. Mm-hmm. Go
ahead.
And that was to do the same thing, develop other leaders underneath them.
Exactly. I have a postcard that I mail out to people after I've had meetings with them. Adjusting here in my seat. And the quote on it says, leadership is not about leading people. It's about influencing them. And in order to influence them, you must connect with them.
Wow. That's great.
Amen. Can I say amen there?
Yeah, amen.
I love that.
That's a powerful statement.
Yeah. Well, and
it's so important.
A leader can't lead someone who doesn't want to go with them. Like there is no leader unless you have a connection with someone who wants to also be that, like who wants to support their vision and support their capacity in their life, really. And I think that does boil down to influence and connections.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of times the leader is not really the person that's out in front. A lot of times the leader leads from behind. Mm-hmm. A true leader, there was a book, I can't remember who wrote it, and I don't remember the exact title, but it was something to the effect of true leaders eat last.
Exactly.
They make sure that their team is getting everything that they need in order to be effective.
Yes.
That totally, yes. I think that's really, that's probably actually the nuts and the bolts of what it is to be a great leader, is to be able to be, first of all, you have to be crystal clear about your vision, what your purpose is, because they're going to buy into you before they buy into your vision. So you have to be the example, but once you become the example and they buy into it, then your role is to make sure that they're living their purpose and their vision for what they want. Because when you do that, you have people that are going to work as a team. If you don't do that, then people are out saying, okay, well, I really want to go do this. Well, that's not going to fit well. One of the statistics that I read is that only something like 13% of people in corporations really feel like they're being heard and listened to. And it's because
I wouldn't doubt
leaders
that.
are not listening and not being good leaders.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spent, I guess, I was in the telecom industry for about 12 and a half years, close to 13 years. And then I owned a financial planning practice. And when I owned the financial planning practice, I was in both worlds, the business owner, and I was a vice president recruiting people into the financial industry. So, you know, I kind of had a leg in both worlds in that environment. And it was always a situation where, you know, it was more dictatorial than, you know, it's hard to push or pull. You have to be able to, like you said, state your vision and have those people step into it, you know, buy into the vision. And if they're not, then it's either an issue with the vision or an issue with the people that are in there. So, you know, it's either you or them. And you as the leader need to step in and do what you need to do.
Well, and I have found that one thing about what you just said is like super, super true, first off. But a lot of times the problem is the clarity. That the leader doesn't have a clear idea where they want to go, and the followers don't have an idea where they want to go. The team doesn't. And so it's kind of like chickens, like you kind of peck over here and kind of peck over here, but you never really make any progress. And I mean, I have witnessed that. I have experienced that. I have been that. And
yeah, absolutely. I think part of that, Kim, is that so many people have a really tough, you know, we keep talking about responsibility and accountability. It boils down to, I think a lot of times, this issue of commitment. When you are going to have that responsibility and that accountability, you have to have some level of commitment. And as long as you are not committed to the process, then you can't be held responsible. You can't be held accountable. And, you know, people have this really deep-seated fear of commitment about so many things because it requires change.
yes,
Absolutely.
yes,
And people are terrified of change.
They
What
hate
am I going to have to change in order to implement what's needed to be implemented in order to achieve the vision?
Well, and one of those things is you have to kill your pride, because if you
Definitely.
if you are out being like right all the time, you know, then there's no room for taking responsibility. There's no room. It's always someone else's fault, and it's always someone else's. And I think you just hit like something major of like this conference is about a kickbutt leader. And I think that's a great description for a kickbutt leader versus just an average everyday leader, is that
Right.
you take that responsibility. And they take responsibility not only for themselves, but the actions of their team, because they put the team together.
Yep.
And there was something that I read. I don't remember who wrote it, but they said that the further up to the top you go, the lonelier it gets, and the more responsibility you have and the less freedom you have. And it's because you are in a role of supporting everyone that you are trying to have come with you as leaders and
Mm-hmm.
support people. So it actually kind of is the reverse of what a lot of people think a leader is all about. Like you said earlier, they think they're dictators. Well, no, that doesn't work anymore.
That's not a kickbutt leader.
That is definitely not a kickbutt leader.
In my opinion, a kickbutt leader would be someone who was attracting the tribe and the team that gave them the freedom instead of that loneliness and instead of that place of dragging them down. A kickbutt leader actually attracts the right people in those positions because of their clarity, their understanding of what to do. And so I think there's a huge picture there that people are called leaders, but to be a kickbutt leader is different. To be just a plain old leader is something else, and maybe that is lonely. But kickbutt leadership is about doing it the right way, having that support system for not only you but for them.
Well, and I think there's a couple of things there. One, I think a lot of people misconstrue management with leadership.
Yes.
That's huge. And that drives me crazy when someone Can
I say amen again?
It drives me crazy when people talk about managers are leaders. No, managers are managers. They can be leaders, but not every manager is a leader. Most managers are managing. They are down in the weeds dealing with all of the different aspects of what's going on. A leader is going to allow people to do what they need to do. They will, like we said, set the vision and that sort of thing. The other thing, though, that I wanted to touch on when you were talking about how leadership can be lonely, sometimes it can be lonely even if you're a kickbutt leader, because you're having to make the tough decisions sometimes. A kickbutt leader has a responsibility to the whole team, and sometimes you have to remove someone from that team who is not living up to all of the standards. Yes, right. And if the rest of the team is in love with that person, even though that person isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, then there's going to be a period of time where you as the leader have to step out and say, this is the right thing. And as the person with the vision, you're going to have to trust me on this. Right now, you're not going to like it very much, and you're probably not going to like me very much because of the decision that I'm making. But you will like me when you see the results.
Exactly.
Great point, though.
That's a huge point.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from how you communicate. Like if there is change in an organization, or if you do have to let somebody go, how you communicate that to the others on the team is really going to be key as to how everybody comes out the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. I when I was in the telecom industry, I was putting together an organization. We were going through an IPO, and I was the general manager for a couple of states, and was responsible for operations and sales and customer service and blah 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 blah. All the parts, right? And the sales, when I submitted what my budget was that I needed based on the numbers they were requiring for my region, they said, okay, that's great, but you've got half that amount. Okay, well, when you have half that amount, you're going to get half the people or half the quality.
Sure.
And, so during that time, I got really good at the conversation of having to let people go because, when you're in that environment where you're trying to find, this one person that you can get for that price, but the majority of people at that price aren't that person. So, you have to keep doing what you can to keep the cohesiveness of the team together while you're building all of that. And, that's a perfect example of where it gets kind of lonely.
Oh,
Not kind of lonely. That can be really lonely. So, yeah.
I just think you demonstrate, though, what a kickbutt leader looks like. You've been through a lot of transitions, like in your career, and you've done different things. But I will tell you, the end result is, I believe you're a phenomenal leader and influencer.
Well, thank you.
So why don't you tell everybody what you are doing now that you're out of that corporate environment?
Yeah. So I'll tell a little story of how I got here. How about that?
Okay, that sounds great.
When I sold my financial planning practice, or I got rid of my book of business. I was very frustrated with it. The compliance aspect, I didn't want to go into my office anymore. It was killing my creativity. It was killing my soul. And at the same time, I was in my now ex-husband, he and I were separated. And I thought, okay, I'll get rid of the business. I'll focus on our relationship, try to get our relationship back in order. And it just kept falling further and further apart. So then I didn't have my business and I didn't have my marriage any longer, because we did end up in divorce. And as I was going through all of that, I did a lot of the introspective work. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? That sort of thing. And I was doing some freelance copywriting and some marketing consulting and that sort of thing. And excuse me, let me take a swallow of water real quick. I have a frog in my throat. I need one of those cough buttons, that cuts off the sound. So as I was going through that transition and doing the introspective work and thinking about, okay, what did I do right? What did I do wrong in my marriage so that I will be better going forward? Because I would like to have a relationship at some point again in the future, right? And even with friends and family. And what I realized was that because I had moved around so much as a child, while I was great at meeting people and connecting with them, my connections weren't deep connections and I wasn't vulnerable. I didn't open up to people. I would get them to open up to me, but I wouldn't open up. I kept walls built. And so as I started tearing those down, what I found was the relationships, both business and personal, became so much better as a result. And I thought, how can I take what I have done for me and work with my clients on this? How can I help businesses and executives and entrepreneurs and individuals, incorporate this process into their own lives? Because everybody wants to look perfect.
Right.
And yet no one can connect with perfection. It's great to look at the models in the magazines and aspire to be more like them, but none of us will ever be like them, including them, because they've been photoshopped. Exactly. They don't look like that. So, the models themselves don't stand up to that level of perfection. And so the only way that any of us can really make a connection at that level is to, open the kimono and say, here's me, and sometimes you hop on doing, live broadcast without makeup, or, I've done a couple of them when I've just come off the tennis court and it was 110 degrees outside and I thought I would have been done earlier, but I had promised to do this interview of this person that was releasing a book, and she looked great, but I had slicked back sweaty hair and tennis clothes, and you know what, though? It was great. That was reality. That was real life. And people connect with real life. You know, one of the things that I say quite frequently is, you know, when we look at social media, we are typically looking at people's highlight reels. We're not looking at real life.
Right.
And the people who make the biggest impact are showing more of their real life.
Oh, totally.
That's how you make that deep connection. And so, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a delay. So we did an interview with a wonderful gal that I know with Linda Lee, and she showed up this morning. It was 7:00 her time, and she showed up even though she wasn't expecting it to be a video, and she had no makeup on. You know what? It was a really, really, really good video. It was an amazing interview. And I think the most important thing is if you're really a Kickbutt leader, you show up.
Exactly. Absolutely. And, you know, sometimes it's like one of Kim's favorite words. Sometimes it's messy. You know, sometimes it's messy. And that's reality. Life can be very messy. You know, last week I had my Great Dane had surgery. My horse had an emergency, and my foot was injured. I mean, it was like, I was joking. I was like, the only thing around here that's not lame right now was my barn cat.
And you still did interviews, and you still did podcasts, and you still did all kinds of things, even in that messy week.
Yeah, you know, and sometimes reality is that we have to take time out and recoup. You know, we have to heal. We have to take time out for ourselves. That's also reality, you know, and in order to make sure that the next time you do show up, you show up completely. Because that's the other thing. You can't, I'm going to use a phrase here that's not the nicest word, but it's such a great word for half-ass. You don't want to show up half-ass, right? Half-butt.
Exactly. You're going to be Kickbutt. You can't be half-assed.
Exactly. In order to be Kickbutt, you can't be half-assed.
There's our new tagline.
Exactly. In order to show up Kickbutt, you can't show up half-assed. So, you know, and if you can't show up fully, then take the time that you need in order to show up fully. Because life sometimes sucks. I mean, sometimes it's hard, and you have to take time out to do those things, you know, and if you haven't been in a situation yet where life was tough and you needed to do that, don't worry, it's coming.
Absolutely.
It's coming. And Lord, I hope that it doesn't. You know, if it hasn't happened to you yet, I hope it doesn't, but odds are really good that it will. And what my encouragement for people is, when life does happen like that, reach out to the people that you need, show the vulnerability, share with the people around you that, hey, I'm at a low point right now. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're depressed. It doesn't mean anything. Maybe you're having to have, you know, hip surgery, or maybe you're having to, you know, maybe you had a family member who passed away, or maybe, you know, your kids are sick, or, you know, like in my fur babies are sick, or whatever. Let the people know what's going on, and you'll find that you get the support that you need. It may not be anyone in your house helping you do the things that you need to do, but people will share love with you, and they'll be there for you should you need to talk. You know, reach out and say, hey, I've got this going on. Would you guys mind praying for me? Would you guys mind holding space for me? Would you guys mind sending energy, or whatever the thing is that you do to support someone else? Would you mind doing that for me? And when you can do that, when you can actually say those words to the people in your life, whether it's the work people or the personal people, then your life changes a lot.
Absolutely.
And that's how the whole program of Vulnerability Warrior came about, was, just embracing all of the steps that I went through to get to a point to where I could say that, because I had always been the rock. I had always been the anchor. I was always stoic. I was always the tower that everyone else leaned on. I wasn't the leaning tower of Pisa. I was Pisa and they were leaning on me.
Oh my gosh. You are so cute.
Well, and it takes times in our lives that where we do find ourselves in need of support and help, for us to recognize that, it's okay for us to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, so many people, huh?
I think it's a superpower.
It absolutely is. In fact, one of the free reports that I have given before was Discover Your Superpower. And in the report, it talks about your vulnerability and how you use that in the stories that you tell to make that deepest connection. Because it's absolutely not a weakness. It is not weak to let people know that you're having a moment or a day or a week or a month or a year. Yes. Or a decade. That is not weakness. It is not weakness to stand in front of a room full of people and say, this is what I went through, and to open your heart to them and show your wounds. That is not weakness.
No, absolutely.
That is absolute courage. And there's a quote that Pastor Rick Warren said. I can't remember if it was in a recent sermon or if it was in a podcast. There is no courage without fear.
Absolutely.
I just told you that yesterday.
She did. She just said that yesterday.
So.
Yeah. And, people are so afraid of being vulnerable. And when you share that vulnerability, you are being courageous. That is not weakness. It takes major guts to stand up and say, or sit down and say, here's me, here's what I have going on.
Yes. Yeah. That's so important. Well, I have to tell you, Angela, we're out of time, but
okay.
A lot of wisdom and great information. And I just love your vulnerability warrior. I think that's just what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
And being vulnerable is so important for so many of us. And sometimes it's a learned skill. We're not always allowing ourselves. We want to be, but sometimes we have to learn how to do that. So thank you so much for the work that you do. And I really appreciate you on this and sharing your knowledge and your background and your experience. You truly are a light.
Sure. Thank you so much, Connie. And thank you too, Kim. And by the way, I have a list, and I don't have to give it out if you don't want to, but I have a list of some of my favorite books that help you get through some of that, and some of my favorite journaling techniques. Would you guys?
We'll put a link on the video. Thank you so much for that. That's a great gift.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if people want to go to it, it's www.awstillwell.com. AWSTILLWELL.com. And it's a list of some books on, how to think about what's going on in your head. There's some books about motivation. There's some books about, there's all sorts of things that are on that list. And and some journaling technique.
It sounds like every one of them would be great for Kickbutt leadership.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Well, thank you again for coming on, and I can't wait to talk to you again sometime soon.
Thank you so much, ladies. I am so happy to be here with both of you today. You look beautiful. Wish I was sitting right there between the two of you. That would be fun.
That would be awesome. That would be totally awesome. So, well, I'm Coni Meyers with Kickbutt Leadership, and this is my co-host.
I'm Kim White with the My Sexy Business team.
And when we had our little break between the two last two interviews, she came up with a great statement. Can you repeat it for us?
Oh, I just think a kickbutt leader attracts the right tribe, creates the right team, and increases sales for all of them.
And I think that pretty much describes it. So if you'd like to learn more about Kickbutt Leadership, just go to kickbuttleadership.com. There's a course available that's offered at a highly discounted price right now. And there's a free assessment you can take to see where you are as a Kickbutt leader. So just go to kickbuttleadership.com. And we will be back at 3 o'clock Central Time, 1 o'clock Pacific Time, with a friend of mine. Her name is Cheryl Knowlton. We're looking forward to that. Thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, ladies.